Late at night when the town was quiet and almost every shop had its lights-off police officer, Daniel slowly drove his patrol car down the empty street that led toward the old jewelry shop that many people in the area knew well. The cold wind moved small pieces of paper across the road, and the streetlights flickered every few seconds, making the whole place feel strange and a little scary. As Daniel passed the corner, he suddenly noticed a man walking alone near the jewelry shop door. The man was tall, wearing a dark coat with a hood pulled low over his face, and he moved with slow, careful steps, as if he had all the time in the world. At first, Daniel thought the man was just someone going home late at night, but then he saw something that made him sit up straight. The glass door of the jewelry shop looked cracked, as if someone had hit it very hard. The small red alarm light above the door was flashing again and again, which meant the security system had been triggered. But the strange thing was that the man did not seem scared or surprised at all. He did not try to run. He did not even look shocked that the police car had stopped near him. He just stood there in the cold wind and waited. This calmness made Daniel feel uneasy, because most people, when they see a police car near a broken shop, either get scared or try to explain themselves. This man did neither. Daniel stepped out of his car with one hand near his radio and called out loudly for the man to stop. The man stopped right away, but he did not turn his head. He only raised his hand slowly, as if he had expected this moment. His voice was soft, almost too soft for the empty street, but Daniel heard it clearly. He said, "I did not do anything." Daniel walked closer, pointing his flashlight at the man's face, but the hood hid most of it. He could only see a calm expression, eyes that did not show fear, and lips that were pressed into a thin line like someone who already accepted whatever would happen next. Daniel felt something strange in his chest. Something about this man felt off, not dangerous, but unusual, like he was hiding something important. Daniel asked the man for his name, but the man stayed silent. When Daniel repeated the question, the man finally spoke. "You will not believe me if I tell you who I am." Those words made Daniel pause for a moment. Criminals say a lot of strange things, but this sentence did not sound like fear or lies. It sounded like warning. Within minutes, more police cars arrived, their blue lights flashing across the dark buildings. Officer Marie and Officer Tom stepped out and joined Daniel. Together, they entered the shop while two other officers kept the man surrounded. Inside the shop, the alarm's loud beeping filled the air. The glass counter had a small crack. A chair was tipped over. The floor had marks that looked like someone had struggled here, but there was no sign of the shop owner. His phone was on the floor. His keys were behind the counter. Daniel looked around carefully and did not see any broken cases or missing jewelry. Nothing was stolen. It looked more like the shop owner had vanished suddenly. When Daniel went back outside, the quiet man was still standing in the same place with his hands up, but he did not look worried. Officer Tom searched him and found nothing except a small metal key with strange numbers printed on it. No wallet, no phone, no ID, no address, nothing at all. This made him even more suspicious, because most people always carry at least something. The metal key was the only clue, and the numbers on it did not look like normal house or locker numbers. They looked like a code, something only a certain group of people would understand. The officers asked again for his name, but the man looked at them calmly and repeated his strange sentence. "You will not believe me if I tell you who I am." Officer Marie asked if he knew anything about the broken shop door or the missing owner. The man said something even stranger. "I was trying to help him, but you came too early." Daniel felt goosebumps rise on his arms. What did that mean, too early? If the man was really helping, then why did he not call the police? Why was he standing alone near the broken shop door with a strange key in his pocket? Nothing made sense. The more Daniel looked at him, the more he felt this man was not a simple suspect. He acted like someone who knew something big, but did not want to share it. Yet he did not look dangerous. He looked like someone who was carrying a heavy secret. The silence around them grew heavier as the officers gathered at the scene. The flashing lights painted the street blue and red. The night felt colder. Even the wind seemed quiet, like it was waiting for something else to happen. Daniel kept staring at the man, hoping to find some hint in his expression, but the man stayed calm with the same relaxed eyes. It almost felt like he was watching the officers instead of being afraid of them. This bothered Daniel because innocent people usually panic in situations like this. But this man behaved like someone who had faced danger many times before. Finally, the officers decided they had enough reason to take him into custody. The broken door, the missing shop owner, the strange key, and his refusal to give his name all pushed them to place him under arrest. Daniel read him his rights, but the man only nodded as if he already knew every word. As they placed handcuffs around his wrists, the man lifted his head slightly and whispered something Daniel almost missed. He said, "I warned you." That single short sentence stayed in Daniel's mind as they put the man in the police car. It felt like the beginning of something bigger, something dark, something none of them were ready for. And Daniel had no idea that this strange, quiet man would change everything. In the next few hours, as the police car moved through the quiet streets toward the station, Daniel kept looking in the rear-view mirror at the man sitting calmly in the back seat with handcuffs around his wrists but no fear in his eyes. Most suspects yell, beg, cry, or try to explain themselves, but this man sat perfectly still like someone who already knew what would happen next. The flashing streetlights passed over his face, but his expression never changed. It bothered Daniel more than he wanted to admit. When they reached the station, 2 officers opened the door and helped the man out, but even then he did not resist or complain. He simply walked with them like he was taking a normal evening walk. Inside the station, the warm yellow lights and the soft hum of computers filled the space, but as soon as the officers entered with the quiet man, every person nearby turned to look. The man's hood had fallen back, now revealing a face that looked calm, strong, and strangely confident. Not in an arrogant way, but in a way that made him look like nothing here scared him, not even the jail cells, not even the officers who watched him with suspicion. They took him to the booking desk where Officer Ryan asked the usual questions: full name, age, address, but the man stayed silent. When Ryan repeated the questions, the man finally spoke, but he did not give any useful answer. All he said was, "I am not your enemy." Ryan rolled his eyes, thinking the man was playing games. Daniel, however, felt something else, something he could not explain. When they tried to take the man's fingerprints, the machine beeped and showed an error message. Ryan tried again, pressing the man's fingers harder against the screen, but the machine flashed red and reset itself. Daniel frowned because this had never happened before. The machine worked for everyone, even people with burns or cuts. But with this man, it refused to scan. Ryan tried a third time, and the screen suddenly turned black for a few seconds before restarting with a bright white flash. The whole room fell silent. The man looked at the machine, then at Daniel, and softly said, "I told you things will not work on me." His voice was calm, without any pride or fear, just simple truth. The officers searched his coat again, hoping to find something, anything that could reveal who he was. But all they found was that same strange metal key with the odd numbers engraved on it. The numbers looked like a sequence or a code, but no one could guess what they meant. Officer Marie suggested they run the code in the police database to see if it matched any lockers, safe boxes, or evidence room numbers. Ryan typed the code into the system, but before he could finish pressing the keys, the entire computer froze. The cursor stopped moving and the screen stuck on one half-loaded page. Ryan tapped the keys, but nothing worked. Then the screen suddenly turned blue with a strange error sign none of them had seen before. Daniel looked at the man who was still standing there quietly and felt his skin crawl. It was too many coincidences. First, the fingerprint machine, then the computer. Something strange was happening, and the man did not look surprised at all. Since the systems were down, the officers moved the man to the holding area. The hallway felt colder than usual, and the lights above them flickered as if reacting to his presence. They placed him inside a room for questioning. The room had a metal table, 2 chairs, and a bright lamp that made everything look sharper. Daniel sat across from him with a notebook, while Officer Marie watched from the corner. Daniel asked again for his name, and this time the man took a deep breath before answering. "If I tell you who I am, you will call people you do not want to meet." Daniel felt a chill run down his back. He asked what that meant, but the man shook his head. "I do not want trouble for you," he said quietly. "I only want to finish what I came here to do." His words confused Daniel because this sounded more like a mission than a crime. Daniel asked what he was doing near the jewelry shop. The man stared at the table for a long moment, then whispered, "I was trying to stop something, but someone interrupted me." Marie asked if he hurt the shop owner, but the man looked up sharply and said, "No, I was trying to protect him." Those words hit Daniel like a cold wave. Protect him from what? Daniel asked. The man did not answer. Instead, he looked toward the door as if expecting someone to walk in. And someone did. The station door opened loudly, and a tall, serious-looking man in a black coat walked in flashing a badge none of them had seen before. He spoke with a steady, firm voice, saying he needed to speak with the arrested man immediately. The officers exchanged confused looks, because this man was not part of their department, not part of any team they knew. But his badge looked official, and his confidence suggested high authority. Daniel protested, saying they were still questioning the suspect, but the man in black only said, "This case is not yours anymore." He walked straight into the interrogation room without waiting for permission. Daniel and the others watched through the glass window as the man in black leaned close to the suspect and spoke in a low voice. They could not hear a single word, but the quiet man nodded slowly, as if confirming something important. After a few minutes, the man in black stepped out, his face pale and serious. He told the police chief, "You must release him now. He is not your suspect." He refused to explain why. This made Daniel even more confused and worried because nothing about this night made sense anymore. The suspect refused to give his name. Machines glitched around him, and now a mysterious agent wanted him free. Daniel looked back at the quiet man who watched everything with calm eyes and felt the sinking feeling that the man they arrested was far more dangerous or far more important than they imagined, and the real story behind him was only beginning to unfold. The interrogation room felt colder than before as Daniel stepped back inside and closed the door behind him. The bright lamp above the metal table shone directly onto the quiet man's face, but he did not blink or look away. He sat perfectly still with his hands on the table, his cuffed wrists showing no fear or discomfort. The room was small, with plain gray walls and a single glass window through which Officer Marie watched every movement. Daniel took a deep breath, trying to calm the strange feeling inside his chest, because nothing about this man felt normal. The mysterious agent who had come in earlier was now speaking with the police chief in the hallway, whispering in low, urgent tones, but Daniel could not hear what they were saying. He only knew that the agent wanted the man released immediately, which made no sense. How could someone with no ID, no name, and no explanation be freed without any investigation? Daniel sat down slowly and placed his hands on the table. He looked directly into the man's eyes and said quietly, "I want the truth." The man lifted his head just a little, his calm eyes meeting Daniel's without hesitation. "I told you the truth," he said in the same soft, steady voice. "I did nothing wrong." Daniel felt frustration building in him. "Then, why were you near the broken shop? Why was the owner missing? Why did every machine stop working when we tried to check you?" The man listened to every question without any sign of fear or stress. After a long pause, he said, "Because your systems are not built to handle my identity." Daniel felt a chill slide down his spine. "What does that even mean?" he asked. The man leaned forward just slightly, his eyes sharp, but not threatening, and said something that made the room feel even smaller. "If you put my real name into your database, your system will shut down completely." Daniel stared at him, unable to speak for a moment. That sounded impossible, yet the fingerprint machine and the computer earlier had already shown strange behavior. It was hard to ignore that. Daniel asked again for his name, expecting another strange answer, but the man sighed slowly and said, "I have many names, none of which you can use here." Daniel felt the hairs on his arms rise. The man spoke with the tone of someone who was used to hiding and used to controlling secrets much bigger than this town. Daniel pushed harder. "You said you were trying to help the shop owner. Then where is he?" The man looked at the table and spoke with a calm sadness that surprised Daniel. "He is safe. I moved him before you arrived." Daniel blinked in confusion. "You moved him? Why?" The man raised his head and said, "Because something dangerous was coming for him. Something you are not trained to deal with." Daniel felt a strong mix of fear and frustration. He leaned back and crossed his arms. "You expect me to believe that?" The man simply nodded. Daniel almost laughed, but the seriousness in the man's eyes stopped him. There was no lie in his tone, no hesitation. He believed everything he said, which made it even more unsettling. Marie knocked on the window and pointed toward the hallway where the agent waited. Daniel stepped outside the room, leaving the man alone. Outside, the agent looked impatient, his jaw tight, his eyes sharp behind thin glasses. He spoke in a low, cold voice. "You need to stop questioning him. You have no idea who he is." Daniel refused to back down. "Then tell me," he demanded. The agent stared at him for a long, tense moment, as if deciding whether to reveal something dangerous. Finally, he said, "He works for a classified division far above your clearance. You were never supposed to encounter him. His identity is protected. If your system logged him, it would trigger a national alert." Daniel stared in disbelief. Why would someone like that be near a small jewelry shop in this quiet town? The agent's face tightened even more. "That is none of your concern. Release him and forget this night." Daniel felt anger rising in him. "We found him next to a broken shop and a missing owner. I cannot just forget that." The agent stepped closer, his voice dropping to a freezing whisper. "If you do not release him, you will put your entire station in danger." He did not say what kind of danger, but his warning sounded deadly. Daniel felt cold sweat forming on his forehead. He walked back into the interrogation room and sat down again, forcing his voice to stay calm, even though his heart beat faster. "I need you to tell me what is going on," he said quietly. The man looked at him with something that almost resembled sympathy. "You should not be involved," he said. But Daniel pushed again. "I already am involved." The man took a deep breath, and for the first time since the night began, he looked tired, like someone carrying too many secrets. Finally, he said, "There is a device hidden inside the jewelry shop. A dangerous one. Not a bomb, not a weapon, something different. Something that should not be in the wrong hands." Daniel frowned, trying to understand. The man continued. "I was sent to deactivate it. I was close until someone triggered the alarm. Someone who wanted me stopped." Daniel felt the room shrink around him. "Who?" he whispered. The man lifted his eyes and said, "Someone who knows I am here. Someone watching right now." Daniel slowly turned his head toward the mirror, knowing Marie stood behind it, but feeling like someone else could be watching too. The air grew colder before Daniel could ask another question. The lights above them flickered once, twice, then went completely dark. The entire station fell silent. A soft humming sound filled the room like electricity moving through wires. Daniel's heartbeat echoed in his ears. In the darkness, he heard the quiet man's calm voice. "It has started." Daniel swallowed hard, because now he understood one thing clearly. Whatever was happening was bigger than the police, bigger than the town, and this quiet, calm, nameless man was standing right in the center of it. The real danger was only beginning. The sudden darkness inside the police station felt so heavy that Daniel could almost feel it pressing against his skin, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. For a moment there was complete silence, except for the low humming sound that seemed to come from everywhere, at once like invisible wires vibrating in the air. Daniel's hand moved toward his flashlight, but before he could turn it on the overhead, lights flickered weakly and came back dimmer than before, casting long, shaky shadows across the interrogation room. The quiet man still sat calmly in his chair, his face half lit, half hidden, and he did not look surprised at all. "It has started," he repeated softly, his voice steadier than the light above them. Daniel took a slow, careful breath and stood up, trying to ignore the chill running down his back. "What started?" he asked, but the man did not answer right away. Instead, he turned his head toward the one-way glass as if he were looking straight through it at Officer Marie and the rest of the team behind it. After a tense second, he whispered, "Someone activated the device. Someone knows I am here." Daniel felt the cold tighten in his chest. Was someone inside the station controlling it? Outside? Who would want to do that in such a quiet town? He finally stepped out of the room and found the whole station in confusion. Officers were tapping computers. They refused to turn on radios, buzzed with static screens, flashed strange symbols for half a second, and then froze again. Marie rushed toward him, her face pale. "Daniel, something is wrong with all the systems. Even the backup power is acting strange." Before Daniel could answer, the hallway lights blinked, and every door in the station clicked loudly, like their locks had been activated or deactivated at the same time. The sound echoed down the hallway, making everyone freeze. Daniel looked through the glass at the quiet man who still sat without moving, almost as if he had expected every part of this chaos. The agent in the black coat appeared again, stepping out of the shadows of the hallway with an annoyed and worried expression. He walked straight up to Daniel and said in a low, sharp voice, "This is exactly why I told you to release him." But Daniel had reached the point where he needed answers, not warnings. "What is that device? Why is this happening? Who is he?" he demanded, pointing toward the interrogation room. The agent looked frustrated, but after a few seconds, he spoke in a tense whisper. "There are people who should never meet him. There are groups trying to find him. If they locate him even for 1 minute, everything shuts down." Daniel felt a chill. So the device in the jewelry shop was connected to that? The agent nodded slowly. It was a tracker, something highly advanced, placed by dangerous people. It sends a signal when he is near. Daniel stared at the agent in disbelief. Why would anyone track him? Who is he running from? But the agent shook his head. Not running. He is the one chasing them. And tonight they found him first. Daniel tried to understand, but everything felt like a storm of information hitting him at once. He walked back into the interrogation room, the agent following close behind. The quiet man lifted his eyes toward them, the soft glow of the flickering light reflecting in them. Daniel's voice was steady but low. "Is the owner of the shop safe?" The man nodded. "Yes, but he will not be safe for long unless I finish what I started." Daniel leaned closer. "What exactly did you start?" The man replied, "I was sent to disable the tracker, but someone activated it before I could." Daniel frowned. "Who activated it?" The man slowly turned his head to the side, listening as if he could hear something no one else could. Then he said, "They are close, much closer than you think." Daniel's heart beat hard against his ribs. The agent stepped forward and said, "We need to move him right now." But before anyone could take another step, a loud crashing sound came from the front of the station. Officers shouted, asking who was there. Another crash followed as the front door shook violently like someone or something was trying to break in. Daniel ran into the hallway with Marie and 3 other officers. The glass on the front door had long cracks spreading across it. Another hit from outside made the cracks grow wider. Marie whispered in fear, "Is that them?" Daniel did not know what to answer. He turned back toward the interrogation room, but the quiet man was already standing in the doorway, his handcuffs still on, but his posture calm and ready. "You need to let me go," he said firmly. "If you don't, none of you will be safe." Daniel hesitated because releasing a possible suspect went against every rule he had ever followed, but something in the man's voice, something in his calm, steady eyes told Daniel he was not lying. The agent stepped beside Daniel and said, "This is not your fight. Unlock him, now." Before Daniel could decide, the front door of the station burst open, and the cold night air rushed inside, pushing papers and dust across the floor. Dark figures stood outside, not clearly visible, but their shapes moved with purpose. Marie raised her gun, but Daniel grabbed her arm. "Wait." The figures did not step forward. They stood in the doorway like shadows waiting for something. The quiet man walked past Daniel and the others with slow, steady steps. When he reached the hallway, he turned his head slightly and said, "Stay inside, no matter what you hear." Then he walked toward the entrance where the dark figures waited. Daniel felt frozen, unable to move his feet. Something deep inside told him that whatever was about to happen was not a normal fight, not a normal crime, and not something the local police could ever understand. The quiet man stood facing the shadowy figures, the broken front door rattling behind him. For a moment, no one moved. Then, the humming sound grew louder, filling the air like a rising storm. Daniel watched with wide eyes as the quiet man whispered 4 words that made the air grow even colder. "It ends tonight." The air inside the police station felt frozen as the quiet man stepped toward the broken doorway where the dark, shadowy figures waited like silent ghosts. Daniel could not move, even though every part of him wanted to run forward and stop whatever was happening. The cold wind pushed into the hallway, carrying dust, loose papers, and a strange, low sound that made the hair on Daniel's arms stand up. The figures outside did not rush forward or attack. They stood perfectly still, as if they were waiting for the man to come out willingly. The quiet man stopped only a few feet away from the entrance and looked back over his shoulder at Daniel, his eyes calm but filled with something Daniel could not read. "Stay inside," he repeated softly. "You cannot help in this part." Daniel opened his mouth to argue, but no sound came out. Something in the man's voice held him in place like an invisible wall. The agent in the black coat stepped beside Daniel, his voice tight with fear. They found him faster than expected. "This is bad." Daniel turned to him, whispering harshly, "Tell me who they are." The agent shook his head, his voice thin and trembling. "People he was meant to stop years ago. People who should not have this kind of technology. People who would tear this town apart just to catch him." Daniel felt his stomach twist. "And what do they want with him?" he asked. The agent swallowed hard. "They want his identity. If they get it, everything collapses." Before Daniel could ask more, a sudden high-pitched, ringing sound sliced through the air, sharp and painful. The shadowy figures outside stepped forward slowly, and Daniel could finally see them more clearly. They were not wearing normal clothes. They wore dark suits with strange glowing lines running down their sleeves like thin blue circuits. Their faces were covered by black masks with a single bright circle in the middle, like some kind of scanner. Every step they took made the lights in the hallway flicker harder. Marie stood behind Daniel, whispering, "What are they?" But Daniel had no answer. The quiet man raised his hand slightly, as if telling the figures he was ready. One of the masked figures lifted a small device that looked like a round disc glowing with the same blue light. The ringing sound grew louder, and Daniel felt pressure in his ears, almost painful. The kind of pressure that warned him something very dangerous was happening. The agent grabbed Daniel's arm and pulled him back. "Do not step closer," he said. "They are trying to extract this signal." Daniel frowned. "Extract what?" The agent whispered something that made Daniel's chest tighten. "His identity is not like yours. If they manage to capture his signal, they can use it to break into systems all over the country. He is a living key." Daniel stared at the quiet man in shock, realizing that he was not just special or important. He was something far beyond anything Daniel had imagined. One of the masked figures stepped forward, raising the glowing disc higher. A beam of light shot toward the quiet man, forming a thin blue line in the air. Daniel expected the man to fall or get pulled forward by the strange force, but something unexpected happened. The quiet man took one step back, and the beam shattered like glass, hitting an invisible wall. The masked figures stumbled slightly, as if surprised. Then the quiet man finally spoke, his voice steady even against the heavy ringing sound. "You cannot take what you do not understand." His calm tone made the masked figures stiffen. The one holding the disc tried again, raising the device higher, and the beam came back brighter, stronger. Daniel felt the force of it, even from the hallway, like a wave pushing against the air. The quiet man closed his eyes for a moment, then lifted his cuffed hands. The beam hit the invisible barrier again, but this time the man pushed forward slightly, and the beam bent away like water flowing around a rock. The glowing device sparked, sending a burst of light across the entrance. The masked figure dropped it and stepped back quickly. The agent beside Daniel whispered in disbelief, "He is stronger than last time." Daniel did not understand what that meant, but he could see the fear in the agent's eyes and knew this was something the agent had witnessed before, maybe more than once. The quiet man lowered his hands and spoke again. "Leave now. I will not warn you again." The masked figures stood still for a few seconds. Then one of them reached to their wrist and pressed a button. The lights on their suits changed from blue to red. The air grew heavier, almost electric. Something bigger was coming. Daniel shouted at the quiet man, "Come back inside." But the man did not move. Instead, he whispered to Daniel, "Without looking back, whatever happens next, do not open this door." Then the masked figures rushed forward all at once, moving faster than any normal human could move. Daniel gasped, but before any of them could reach the man, a powerful shockwave exploded from the quiet man's body. It wasn't fire or light or anything Daniel had seen in his life. It was like the air itself turned into a force that pushed everything away. The shockwave hit the masked figures, sending them flying backward out into the parking lot. The windows rattled violently, and the hallway lights all went out again. Darkness returned, but this time it was complete. No flicker, no glow, just dark, silent emptiness. When the lights finally came back after a few seconds, the quiet man was gone. The broken door stood open, the cold wind blowing through. Daniel rushed to the entrance with Marie and the agent right behind him. In the parking lot, the masked figures were gone too, not a single trace left behind, as if they had vanished into the night. Daniel felt his chest tighten. He was gone. Whatever he was doing it alone. The agent whispered in a low, frightened voice, "He's going after the source." And Daniel finally realized the worst part. The danger wasn't over. The real fight had just begun. Daniel stood in the cold doorway, staring into the dark parking lot where both the quiet man and the masked figures had vanished. And he felt a deep, sharp fear settle in his chest because he knew something terrible had begun, and he had no way to stop it. The wind blew through the broken police station door, carrying dust and the faint echo of the shockwave that had shaken the entire building only moments ago. Marie stepped beside him, hugging her arms close to her body as if the cold was trying to crawl inside her skin. And she whispered, almost to herself, "I knew he wasn't normal, but this is something else." Daniel kept searching the darkness, hoping to catch a glimpse of a shadow or a movement or anything that might tell him where the quiet man went. But the parking lot stayed empty and silent, as if the world had taken a breath and refused to let it out. The agent stepped forward, rubbing his forehead with shaking fingers, his voice low and tight. He probably blocked their trace scanners, which means he doesn't want them finding him. But it also means he doesn't want us finding him either. Daniel turned sharply. Why? Why would he run off alone if he needed help? The agent stared at the darkness for a moment before answering, because if we follow him, we'll die. Daniel felt a cold weight drop into his stomach, but he pushed it aside. That doesn't mean we give up, he said. He might know what he's doing, but we don't even know what the threat is. Marie nodded slowly. We can't just stand here. We have to understand what's happening. The agent hesitated like he was holding something inside that he didn't want to say. But Daniel glared at him until he finally spoke. There's a reason he wouldn't say his name. There's a reason those masked people want him so badly. Daniel waited, heart beating fast. The agent took a slow breath. He isn't just a key. He's the last surviving part of a project that no longer exists. A project that should have been destroyed years ago. Daniel felt his pulse jump. What kind of project? The agent met Daniel's eyes. A project that created human carriers. People who could hold huge amounts of coded data inside their minds without any device at all. Marie gasped. You mean like a human computer? The agent nodded weakly. More like a human vault. Nearly impossible to hack. Nearly impossible to break. But if captured, dangerous beyond anything you can imagine. Daniel tried to process it, but it felt too heavy, too unreal. That quiet man, the one who barely spoke, the one who kept saying no one would believe him, he was carrying something inside, him powerful enough to change entire countries. And he was out there alone being hunted by people who wore strange glowing suits and used technology Daniel had never seen before. Daniel turned away from the doorway and walked back inside the station, trying to keep his mind steady. The floors were covered with broken glass papers and overturned chairs from the shockwave. Officers were slowly standing, recovering from the blast, confused and afraid. Daniel told Marie and the agent, "Follow me. We need the surveillance room." They hurried down the hallway, stepping over fallen ceiling tiles and flickering lights until they reached a small surveillance office filled with monitors. Most screens were cracked or frozen with static, but a few still showed parts of the town. Daniel scanned every feed, hoping to see anything. The quiet man, the masked, figures, even the strange lights from earlier. But every camera that faced the direction of the station was dead. Black screens and broken lines. Marie pointed at one screen that still worked, showing the far edge of town near the old industrial district. Look. Daniel leaned closer, seeing a faint flash of blue light in the distance, reflecting off the metal roofs. The agent tensed. That's them. They're regrouping. And if he went after the source, he'll head straight there. Daniel grabbed his coat. Then we go there too. The agent stepped in front of him, shaking his head violently. You don't understand. The source is not a person. It's a base. A hidden one. He's heading into enemy ground. If you go there, you'll get yourself killed. Daniel ignored the warning, his voice firm. He saved our lives. I won't leave him alone. Marie touched the agent's arm, gently. You said he's stronger than last time. Maybe he needs someone normal to help him, to remind him he's not just a weapon. The agent looked torn, fear and responsibility fighting in his eyes. Finally, he sighed. Fine. But if we do this, we follow my lead. Daniel nodded. They moved quickly, gathering flashlights, radios, and whatever gear was still intact after the shockwave. The drive through town was silent and tense, the streets dark, except for the faint glow of broken streetlights. The industrial district appeared like a black forest of tall metal buildings, old factories, and silent warehouses that looked abandoned, but held a strange heavy feeling tonight, like they were holding secrets inside their empty walls. As they got closer, the air grew colder, and Daniel saw something that made his breath stop. The sky above the farthest warehouse flickered with thin streaks of blue light, like lightning trapped inside clouds. The agent whispered quietly, "That is the signal field. They are trying to trap him." Daniel parked behind a rusted storage container, and the three of them stepped out cautiously. The blue light above the warehouse pulsed brighter, and the ground seemed to vibrate faintly. Daniel took a breath, steadying his nerves. Whatever was waiting inside that building, whatever the quiet man was doing or fighting, they were now part of it. Marie whispered, "Do you hear that?" Daniel listened. From inside the warehouse came a low hum, deep and mechanical, mixed with something that sounded almost like a voice. A voice speaking in a language he couldn't understand. The agent tensed. They started the extraction system. If he's in there, he's already surrounded. Daniel clenched his fists. "Then we break in." And he moved toward the warehouse door, knowing they were stepping into the heart of the danger, knowing they might not walk back out, but also knowing they had no choice because the quiet man was fighting alone inside, and whatever happened next would change everything.